All right, so get ready because today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty unexpected, I'd say.
Oh, yeah.
A Hegelian campfire song.
Hmm.
Yep, you heard right. We're going to be exploring the place where like really deep philosophy meets that simple joy of,
Right.
roasting marshmallows around a fire.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound kind of strange when you put it that way, but
Right, yeah.
you'd be surprised
It's a fascinating combo.
how insightful it can be.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at this poem called Hegel Camp Fire Song at the Beach.
Okay.
And it's like,
Fancy.
way more elegant French title. La chanson du feu de camp Hégélien sur la plage.
I love it when they have the French titles.
I know.
It
adds a little something.
It does.
It's like someone took like beach vibes and philosophy and blended it into this one like unique drink.
Yeah. And that French title, it's not just for show either.
Right.
Hegel, huge impact on French thinkers.
Yeah.
So right from the start. The poem is kind of hinting at this interplay of ideas and cultures.
Right.
Much like a campfire brings different people together.
I love it. Okay, so before we get like totally lost in the flames, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Remind us what makes this a Hegelian campfire song.
Okay, so it cleverly uses imagery and metaphor to capture Hegel's idea of the dialectic.
Right.
That whole thesis,
Yeah.
antithesis, clashing and merging to make a synthesis.
Right, like a dance of ideas. They're always kind of moving and changing.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution.
Right, but how does the poem bring this to life?
Okay.
It's not like we're reading a philosophy textbook or anything.
No, not at all.
Right.
So there's all about the imagery, right?
Okay.
So the poem kind of paints this scene for us. Twilight on the beach,
Yeah.
dunes against this like sapphire sky, crackling fire,
Yeah.
the smell of smoke, those roasting marshmallows. But
Yeah.
these aren't just, nice details. They're actually representing this Hegelian dialectic in action.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, like, give me an example.
Okay.
How does a toasted marshmallow represent a philosophical concept?
All right, so take this line. Thesis and antithesis clash, then merge as one in perfect synthesis. The toasting marshmallows done.
Whoa!
Right. So the poem takes this act of fire, transforming these separate ingredients, into this like delicious whole.
Right.
And uses that as a metaphor for how these opposing ideas come together into a new unified concept.
So it's like the marshmallow itself
Yeah.
represents that whole process of the dialectic, like raw ingredients of the initial ideas.
Uh-huh.
The fire is that clash.
Yes.
And then that like gooey toasted result
The synthesis.
is the synthesis. That's really clever.
Yeah, and the poem is full of moments like this.
Wow.
Where these ordinary things become these windows into, deeper philosophical truths.
It's kind of cool how it does that.
Yeah.
It's not just about, intellectually understanding Hegel's ideas, but it's like we're experiencing them
Yes.
through these really relatable, almost delicious metaphors.
Absolutely. And it even goes deeper than that.
Oh.
The focus on the senses, the warmth of the fire, the smell of the smoke,
Yeah.
those aren't just there for atmosphere.
Right.
Those tie into the idea of absolute spirit.
Okay, so let's break down absolute spirit, because that's one of those like
Eddie.
Hegelian terms that can feel kind of abstract.
Right.
How does the poem ground it for us?
Okay, so remember, absolute spirit is about this universal consciousness, the unity that includes everything.
Right.
And this poem suggests that even these simple shared experiences, like just being around a campfire, can offer us a glimpse into that interconnectedness.
So those shared sensory experiences, those moments of togetherness, become almost like a little microcosm of that bigger universal unity.
Yes, precisely.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, and the poem goes on to explore this idea by constantly playing with opposites.
Okay.
Warmth and cold, light and darkness, the finite and the infinite.
Which makes sense because for Hegel, these opposing forces, they're not meant to stay separate.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about how they come together.
They inform and complete each other.
Right. And that interplay of opposites leads us to the poem's, I think, really powerful ending.
Yes.
Where it tells us to kind of abandon time and find unity in this campfire of eternity.
Yeah. It's a beautiful image.
It is.
And a bit mysterious.
Yeah. How do you interpret that? Is it a literal, like, we should all escape reality, or is it something more metaphorical?
That's a great question. I think it's more about a shift in perspective.
Okay.
It's not really about literally abandoning time, but more about recognizing that these moments of connection, of shared experience, they have this kind of timeless quality to them.
Okay.
They point to something larger, something eternal. that connects us all.
So less about escaping the present and more about like really being present in it.
Yes.
Recognizing that even these fleeting moments have so much meaning.
Yeah, because they connect us to something larger than ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah, and it ties back to that concept of absolute spirit, through these shared experiences.
Yeah.
However simple they may seem,
Yeah.
we can tap into that universal consciousness.
It's amazing how the poem manages to blend those like big philosophical ideas with that simple act of being around a fire.
Yeah, it's a reminder that philosophy, it's not just for academics. It's something we can find in the everyday, in the warmth of human connection.
I like that.
In the crackle of the flames. It's definitely not your typical campfire song.
No, not at all. But that's what makes it so intriguing.
Right.
It takes something so familiar and comforting and uses it to explore these really profound concepts.
It does.
And it does it in a way that's, like you said, surprisingly accessible.
Yeah.
Almost playful.
Exactly. It's not about intimidating us with jargon.
Yeah.
It's inviting us into this dance of ideas, showing how philosophical concepts can actually illuminate our own lives and the world around us.
And who knows, maybe after this deep dive, people listening will look at their next campfire or even any moment of shared experience with like this new sense of wonder and philosophical curiosity.
That would be fantastic because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
It's about finding meaning and connection in these seemingly ordinary moments of our lives.
Beautifully said. Now, I got to ask about those French phrases sprinkled throughout the poem.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely add a certain je ne sais quoi.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
It's like they're inviting us to, really savor not just the experience of the campfire, but like the beauty of language.
Right. And remember, this isn't just any beach bonfire. It's like specifically Hegelian.
Right.
So I'm wondering if those French phrases are like a nod to Hegel's influence on French philosophy.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a hidden layer of meaning woven into the poem.
Exactly. There's always more to uncover.
Always.
And you really dig a little deeper.
You got it.
And speaking of digging deeper, I'm really struck by the poem's emphasis on those sensory details.
Yes.
It's not just about abstract ideas. It's about feeling that warmth, smelling that smoke, tasting the marshmallows.
Absolutely. And those sensory details, they're not just there to create atmosphere. They're crucial to understanding the poem's philosophical message.
Because they bring us back to that present moment.
Yeah.
That shared experience of being together.
Exactly. And that's where that connection to absolute spirit comes in.
Right.
Remember, Hegel believed that true understanding, true unity, it's not something we achieve through solitary contemplation. It's something we experience through our interactions with the world.
Oh, I see.
Through our relationships with others.
Okay, so the campfire then becomes almost like a microcosm of that bigger idea of interconnectedness.
Precisely. It's like a space where individual differences just kind of melt away.
Right.
And we're all united by that simple act of sharing, warmth, stories, laughter.
And that's why the poem encourages us to abandon time in that campfire of eternity.
Yes.
It's about recognizing those moments of connection. As fleeting as they may seem, they have this power to transcend the boundaries of our individual lives.
Yes. They point to something larger, something eternal that connects us all.
It's such a beautiful thought.
Isn't it?
That something as simple as a campfire can hold that much meaning.
It is, and I think that's part of what makes this poem so compelling. It takes these grand philosophical ideas and makes them feel personal, relatable, even tangible.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
It reminds us that philosophy isn't just some abstract academic pursuit.
Yeah.
It's about understanding ourselves, our world, and our place in the grand scheme of things.
And sometimes the best way to do that is to just gather around a fire, share some stories, and let the warmth of those flames just kind of ignite our curiosity and our sense of wonder.
I love how this poem is both playful and profound at the same time.
Yeah, it's a reminder that intellectual exploration doesn't have to be dry and dusty.
Right.
It can be filled with joy, laughter, even a touch of silliness.
Like toasting a perfect marshmallow.
Exactly. A moment of pure synthesis.
It's all connected.
It is.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into this Hegelian campfire song, I have to ask, how do we find our own campfires of eternity in our everyday lives?
Yeah.
Because we can't all be sitting on a beach with a crackling fire every night.
That's a great question.
Right.
And it's one that the poem invites us to ponder.
Right.
I don't think there's just one right answer.
Yeah.
But the poem does offer some clues.
Okay.
It points us toward those moments of shared experience, those sparks of human connection that kind of transcend the ordinary.
So maybe it's not about seeking out something so extraordinary.
Right.
But more about paying attention to those simple things.
Exactly.
The everyday moments.
Yeah.
That we often kind of overlook.
Yeah, it could be as simple as sharing a meal with loved ones.
Right.
Being present in that moment.
Yeah.
Appreciating the connection, that shared experience.
Right.
Or maybe it's collaborating on a creative project, feeling that spark of inspiration when you're working together.
Or even just having like a deep conversation with a friend.
Yes.
Listening deeply.
Yeah.
Feeling that understanding and empathy.
Yes.
Those moments can be so powerful.
They really can.
And I think what the poem's saying is that those moments, as fleeting as they may seem,
right,
can connect us to something larger than ourselves.
They offer us a glimpse into that unity, that interconnectedness that Hegel called absolute spirit.
So it's not about those grand gestures or life-altering events.
Right.
It's about finding those little sparks of connection in the everyday.
Exactly.
And recognizing that they can illuminate our lives and connect us to something so much bigger.
Precisely. And who knows, maybe by paying attention to those sparks, we might find that our lives are filled with more campfires of eternity than we thought.
That's a great thought.
Yeah.
So well said. I think that's a beautiful point to end on.
I think so too.
So to our listener, as you go about your day-to-day, remember that wisdom from this Hegelian campfire song? Look for those moments of connection. Cherish those sparks of shared humanity. And see if you can find your own campfires of eternity burning brightly in the heart of the everyday.
Until next time, keep those philosophical flames burning.
And don't forget those marshmallows.
Never. One thing that strikes me about this poem is how it can be so playful and yet so profound at the same time.
Right. It's not like your typical philosophical treatise?
Not at all. It's like the poet is reminding us that thinking deeply doesn't have to be this serious, dry, boring activity. It can be joyful, engaging, even a little silly at times.
Like that line about the perfectly toasted marshmallow as a representation of synthesis.
Exactly.
It's so clever, memorable, and honestly, it just makes you want to grab a bag of marshmallows and head to the nearest fire pit.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that philosophy can really be found anywhere, even in those simple pleasures.
Well, speaking of simple pleasures, I'm curious about the poem's emphasis on sensory details. It's so vivid, you can practically feel the warmth of the fire, smell the smoke in the air.
That vividness is key, isn't it? It's not just about understanding Hegel's ideas on an intellectual level.
Right.
It's about experiencing them through our senses, making them come alive.
So are you saying those sensory details are more than just, pretty language?
Oh, for sure.
They're crucial to the poem's message about connection and unity.
Exactly. Remember, for Hegel, true understanding isn't a solitary thing. It's something we achieve through those interactions with the world around us.
Right.
Our relationships with other people and those sensory details. Well, they bring us right into those shared experiences.
So it's like the poem is saying we connect with the world and each other through our senses.
Precisely. And when we share those sensory experiences with others, like, say, gathering around a campfire, we tap into something deeper, something more universal.
That reminds me of the poem's ending where it talks about the campfire of eternity.
Oh, yeah, that image.
What do you make of that? What is the poet trying to get across there?
It's such a powerful image.
It is.
I think it's pointing to the idea that even though these moments of connection are fleeting, they can have a lasting impact. They can transcend time and connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
So it's not about, literally sitting around a campfire forever.
No.
It's about recognizing that timeless quality that exists in those shared experiences.
Exactly. And recognizing that those connections, those moments where we really feel our shared humanity, those are the things that give our lives meaning and purpose.
That is beautifully put.
Thank you.
So, as we start to wrap up our deep dive into this unique poem, I have a question for you and for our listeners.
All right.
How can we find those campfires of eternity in our everyday lives? I mean, we can't all be on a beach with a fire every night.
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like, where do we even begin to look for that kind of profound connection?
Exactly, especially amidst all the busyness and chaos of daily life.
It can be tough.
It can.
Well, I think it starts with being present.
Okay.
Being mindful of those moments, however small, that bring us together.
So being more intentional.
Yeah, exactly.
About seeking out those moments.
It could be something as simple as sharing a meal with your family or friends.
Right.
But like really being present in that moment, appreciating the connection and the shared experience.
Being present, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally present.
Yes, exactly. Or maybe it's working together on some kind of creative project.
Yeah.
Feeling that spark of inspiration when minds come together.
Or even just having a genuine heart-to-heart conversation with a friend.
Yes.
Listening deeply, feeling that sense of understanding and empathy.
Those moments can be incredibly powerful.
They can. And I think what the poem is suggesting is that those moments, however fleeting,
right,
can connect us to something so much larger than just ourselves.
Exactly. They offer a glimpse into that unity, that interconnectedness that Hegel called absolute spirit.
So it's not about those big, showy gestures or those, like, life-altering events.
No, not necessarily.
It's about finding those tiny sparks of connection in the everyday and recognizing their potential to bring light into our lives and connect us to something bigger.
Precisely. And, maybe if we start paying attention to those sparks, we might find that our everyday lives are filled with more campfires of eternity than we realized.
Wow, that's a beautiful thought.
It is, isn't it? It makes you want to go out and find those sparks.
It does.
Appreciate them.
Now, I know we've been focusing a lot on the imagery and the sensory details in the poem, but I did want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. Those French phrases sprinkled throughout the text.
Ah, yes. They definitely add a certain je ne sais quoi, don't they?
They do. And I think it goes beyond just adding a touch of elegance or sophistication.
Oh, I agree.
What are your thoughts?
Well, remember how we were talking about Hegel's profound influence on French philosophy?
Yes.
I'm wondering if those French phrases are like a little nod, a subtle acknowledgement of that connection.
You might be onto something.
Yeah.
It's like the poet is creating this dialogue between French and English, mirroring the poem's theme of opposites uniting.
Exactly. It's just another example of how this poem is layered with meaning.
Right. There's always something new to discover when you really take the time to look closer.
Always, always.
I love that. It's like a little treasure hunt for the mind.
It is. And, it goes back to what we were talking about before.
That's it?
About intellectual exploration being joyful and engaging.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about getting to the right answer.
Yeah.
It's about the journey of discovery.
Yeah.
About making those connections, seeing things in a new light.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
And I think that's the perfect note to end on.
I agree. It's been such a fascinating deep dive, into this unique poem.
It really has.
Who knew a Hegelian campfire song?
Right.
Could be so thought-provoking.
Yeah, and inspiring.
It really makes you think about how philosophy, it's not just stuck in textbooks and classrooms,
Right. It's not just some abstract academic thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
It can be found in the most unexpected places.
Right, like a campfire on a beach?
Exactly.
Who would have thought?
And it's also a reminder, I think, that this kind of intellectual exploration can be fun.
Right.
Engaging. And even, a little silly.
Like a perfectly toasted marshmallow representing synthesis.
Right, exactly. It invites us to really embrace that joy of learning.
Yeah, I love that.
See the world with that sense of wonder and curiosity.
So to our listener out there today, as you go about your day, keep an eye out for your own campfires of eternity.
Yes.
Those moments of connection, shared experience, those simple pleasures that spark that feeling of, unity and belonging.
Yeah. Whether it's a shared meal.
Right.
Or maybe it's a project you're collaborating on with others.
Right.
Or even just having a really meaningful conversation with a friend.
I love those.
Yeah.
Those can be so powerful.
Embrace those moments, really cherish those connections and see if you can get a glimpse of that absolute spirit that we've been talking about.
That binds us all together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, until next time.
Until next time.
Keep those philosophical flames burning.
Keep them burning bright.
And don't forget the marshmallows.
Of course not. Never forget the marshmallows.